Sometimes, certain military traditions from different countries around the world seem quite unusual. For example, this is what the changing of the guard looks like in the Greek army. The guard, made up of selected, strong, and resilient men ranging in height from 1.87 to 2.10 meters, is dressed in rather peculiar attire: a fluffy white skirt with tight woolen stockings, a velvet hat, and shoes with a pom-pom. It's like a fashion show or something. Of course, all this is explained by centuries-old tradition and history, with interesting facts about the fustanella skirt and pom-poms, but it still looks pretty strange. Or, for example, there's the so-called dance of hatred on the border between India and Pakistan. Besides the unusual outfits, the event itself is also quite interesting. This ritual takes place regularly and is a source of pride for both countries. Despite such ceremonial peculiarities, in general, the army is associated by most people with strength, protection, and discipline. However, not every army throughout history has always been like that. There have been armies that were naked, ridiculously dressed, armies of zombies, and the mentally ill, and in this episode, you'll see all of that and more. Let's go! The naked Celtic army. The Celts did not recognize anyone's rule. They were a free and fearless people. However, the Roman Empire, which was flourishing at that time, did not stop trying to conquer the territories belonging to the Celts. The question of whether they fought naked is quite complicated. At different times, in different tribes, and in different battles, there were various instances of such behavior, as many Roman chronicles describe. But it wasn't only among the Celts. Many peoples had a tradition of wearing minimal clothing during battle, not necessarily being completely naked. For example, warriors would strip to the waist, and this had roughly the same meaning. Stripping before battle was both a display of bravery and a way to intimidate the enemy, and it was also meant to gain the support and understanding of the gods, especially when combined with magical symbols tattooed on the skin. One can imagine the extreme case of what an army of warriors covered in tattoos looked like. There is also a practical explanation for this. By undressing, the warriors gained freedom of movement, and it was harder to grab a naked person during a fight. By the way, the Gauls are also tribes of the Celtic group. These are the same Gauls who inspired the French to create the legendary series of comics and films about Asterix and Obelix, who, similarly, you could say, are half naked. With a magic potion brewed by the Druid, they stand against the Romans led by Caesar, who invades Gaul. The Army of the Order of St. Lazarus. If you combine medieval religious fanaticism, war, and deadly disease, you get the Order of St. Lazarus. This is the most secluded military monastic order of the Crusades era, and it became the most secluded because the soldiers were united by leprosy, a deadly infectious disease. The disease could cause terrible changes to a person's physical appearance. Precisely because people with leprosy were frightening and could infect others, it was customary to isolate them from healthy people. Over time, the order began to accept ordinary people with leprosy into its service, among whom there could be knights and soldiers, thus forming a full-fledged army of lepers or living dead. Nominally, lepers were already considered dead, and dying in battle was much more honorable than rotting alive. The advantage of such an army was that the fighters had nothing to lose. The affected parts of their bodies felt no pain. The warriors fought like madmen, and they terrified the enemy with their hideous appearance and the fear of infection. They also marched in the front ranks, thus giving healthy soldiers a better chance to hold out longer in battle. So, it would not be an exaggeration to say that in the Middle Ages there was a real zombie army. The Prussian Army of Giants, or the Polish Potsdam Giants. The Prussian King Frederick William I had his own unusual hobby. He collected tall people to form a regiment of giants in his army. He not only gathered and conscripted them throughout the country, but also bought them for huge sums of money, asked for them as living gifts, and over time even tried to breed an entire company of giant people. One of the well-known donors was the Russian Emperor Peter I, who thus established relations with the Prussian king. The salary of these soldiers depended precisely on their height, not on their military abilities or rank. Dahomey Amazons. Not so long ago, in the 17th century, an army of fearless, wild, and fierce women appeared in the kingdom of Dahomey, who terrified the European colonizers. foreigners called them the Dahomey Amazons. These women were not just fierce warriors, but also an elite force that protected their king during the bloodiest battles and were considered untouchable. Their signature move was beheading their enemies. And this is definitely not a myth. The last surviving Dahomey Amazon died not so long ago, in 1979 at the age of 100. In the 19th century, the Amazon army numbered about 6,000 women soldiers, which made up a third of the entire kingdom's army. For 2 centuries, these women terrified all of Africa. Their military training began at the age of 8 and included many endurance tests. The Amazons were not just considered untouchable. They were not allowed to marry or have children, and any man who touched such a warrior faced the death penalty. The American Inflatable Army. During World War II, a top-secret battalion appeared in America. The battalion's weapon was the art of stagecraft. This special unit brought together artists, sound engineers, and other members of the creative intelligentsia under its wing. Between 1944 and 1945, the Ghost Army prepared and staged at least 20 missions. The soldiers disoriented the enemy by using a fake army made of plywood and inflatable tanks and guns. They created grand weapon depots out of empty crates covered with camouflage netting, backing up the whole deception with fake radio transmissions. As a result, the enemy couldn't understand where an entire army was suddenly coming from and made wrong tactical decisions, striking the wrong targets, wasting ammunition, and losing soldiers in a war against a non-existent enemy. Since the props and weapons could be moved easily and quickly, these toy armies would appear just as quickly and disappear just as fast, confusing the German troops. And although the Ghost Army became the first official unit of its kind, the art of disorienting the enemy has existed for a long time. A well-known example of this is the Trojan horse, and in our modern times, Russia also has such military equipment, ranging from various tanks to the inflatable Topol M. The Vatican Army. In fact, the Vatican itself never had and does not have an army. But back in 1506, the Pope ordered the Vatican to hire Swiss soldiers, who worked as mercenaries in many European countries. Since then, the Swiss Guard, consisting of 150 people, has been protecting the pontiffs and the papal residence. The mercenary troops distinguished themselves twice in military actions during World War II, when fascist troops entered Rome. The Guards declared that if German troops violated the borders of the Vatican, they would fight to the last bullet. During World War II, no German soldier entered or crossed the Vatican's border. Although it's obvious that it wasn't so much about the bravery of the Swiss Guards, but rather about secret agreements and covert deals between the Vatican and the Third Reich, which historians still don't publicize much. Denmark's Dog Army. To be precise, the Dog Army is an elite unit of the Danish Navy, engaged in deep reconnaissance and maintaining Denmark's sovereignty in the northern and eastern parts of Greenland. This unit is called Sirius. Patrolling is carried out by 2 people and 14 dogs over a period of 6 months. Sirius can take part in combat operations, although its main task is maintaining order. The unit was founded in 1941 to prevent the landing of German troops in Greenland. Sirius is also called the Sled, or Ski Patrol. Basically, it's like a kind of puppy patrol for adults. Israel's Army of Autistic Soldiers. Before starting their service, special soldiers go through a 3-month training course at a college, where they work not only with military personnel, but also with psychologists. In the special regiment, they analyze satellite data and images of the Earth's surface. This kind of work requires complete immersion and a high level of concentration, which autistic people are able to do much better than ordinary people. These soldiers serve just like regular ones for 3 years, but with one distinctive condition: this service is voluntary. With the experiment deemed successful, autistic soldiers are expected to take on additional roles in the future. Somalia. As a result of the civil war that began back in 1988, the Federal Republic of Somalia plunged into chaos and has not been able to get out of it for almost 35 years now. You can even hear the opinion that Somalia is synonymous with anarchy or even libertarianism. The armed forces of Somalia can surprise not only with their structure, but also with the very fact of their existence. The total number of personnel is only about 20,000 people, which looks completely insignificant against the backdrop of a population of 15 million. Its equipment inventory consists of 10 tanks and 100 armored vehicles. Not so long ago, the United Arab Emirates allocated funds for the development of Somalia's navy. As of today, it has 200 sailors and only a few boats in terms of equipment. Interestingly, despite all this, the country has the longest coastline in all of Africa. Most residents prefer to join various rebel paramilitary groups, which is why they have to conscript almost everyone. They conscript men and women from 16 to 49 years old. In 2005, the UN included the government in power on the list of organizations recruiting children to participate in combat operations. The most troubling thing is that, because of everything happening in the country, the armed forces of Somalia simply won't be able to provide protection for the state in case of an external attack. They're simply too weak and mostly occupied with internal conflicts. These are the kinds of unusual armies from the past and present that you can find on our planet. Thank you for watching and for the Somali light. See you next time!